Okay, so today is the 15th of June, 2028, and we'll talk about three architects. Although the second one didn't practice architecture per se, but he did study architecture in Milan, and he did graduate from that school. We begin with Walter Netsch, a very interesting designer at the well-known firm of Skidmore, Owings and Merrill in the United States. So he was born in 1920, and you'll see some remarkable buildings by this gentleman. SOM, I don't know what you know about SOM, but we'll talk a little bit about it. So again, we begin the day today with showing the works of this very interesting, actually I was wrong, he was not born today, he died on June 15th. Sorry about this. Walter A. Netsch was born 1920 and died on June 15th, 2008, 14 years ago. Was an American architect based in Chicago. He was most closely associated with the brutalist style of architecture, as well as with the firm of Skidmore, Owings and Merrill. His signature aesthetic is known as field theory and is based on rotating squares into complex shapes. But this is a very simplistic way to present him, but this is what Wikipedia offers us. He may be the best known as the lead art designer for the United States Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs, a remarkable building, and we are going to see it in Colorado, and its famous Cadet Chapel. The cadet area at the Academy was named a National Historic Landmark in 2004. He was a fellow of the American Institute of Architects. This is the man, this was the man, dressed for business, so to speak. I imagine he was, I don't know, a difficult man in a way. He is, here he is with another important designer of this, one of the largest architecture firms in the world, Skidmore, Owings and Merrill. Gordon Bunshaft is on the left, and here is Walter Netsch with a strange sweater, a little bit, but he had a certain level of strangeness, which some people associate with genius. He does look like a genius, like a nerd in a way, you know. And geniuses sometimes do deserve to be called nerds. Anyway, here he is again, with a tie and all the rest. Walter Netsch, and here he is in his older age, in his own home, being interviewed by, I used to know his name, but I forgot. Anyway, this is his own home, the Walter Netsch's home. Again, this is the day when in 2008, I think, he died. Well, in his older age, he doesn't look any longer like a nerd. But we are going to look at some of his works, which are good. Time passed, but I think his works are still, some of them, quite remarkable. He worked with geometry, as you can see, what with rotations. He rotated squares and whatever. And because of it, there is a dynamic quality in what he built. What is remarkable, what was and is remarkable about SOM, Skidmore, Owings and Merrill, is that a very large and successful firm and very, very organized allowed for individual creative forces like Walter Netsch to manifest themselves in sometimes even in an idiosyncratic way. I mean, look at this, how ample this constructive effort is, based on the design of this particular architect. The SOM had other important designers, some of them, more or less eccentric, but the firm accommodated them. And maybe but the new World Trade Center, which replaced the Twin Towers that fell, was also built by SOM, by David Childs. Anyway, we are looking now at the rotations, geometrical rotations of this architect, Walter Netsch. And, you know, I myself feel tempted to study further his work because, you know, it might appear that at the first sight that things are not too complicated, but I think these rotations that he worked with actually show the rebelliousness of Walter Netsch. And look at the almost obsessive intricacies of these, you know, complex geometries that he worked with. I mean, you know, maybe they are not, no, there is complexity because of the intricacies that he arrived at, although he works with a few geometrical figures like the octagon, the square, rotated or not, and the octagon is derived from rotating a square, you know, of the same side at 45 degrees and then uniting the corners. All in all, it's a quest for freedom, a quest for a dynamic architecture, but still controlled by powerful geometries and systems. This is his own home in Chicago, the one that he built. You have to understand, a major designer at SOM earned quite a lot, and you know, they afforded, like Gordon Bunshaft, incredible art collections and so on. They were doing very well because they built a lot, and they built well most of the time. Even this house, you know, it has peculiar things like, you know, what's going on here, you know, why, you know, without this part, you know, the building could have been, you know, rather common. But all of a sudden, there is a disturbance, so to speak, something a little bit off, something a little bit awkward. And now you see images from the inside of the house that he built for himself. It's known that the shoemaker doesn't make shoes for himself. It's not always true. Anyway, sorry that the pictures are in black and white, although they could be interesting also in black and white. Like, you know, look at this table here. It's almost dissolving itself. It's almost, you almost don't get it. You know, how was it done? How was it built? Because of its reflective surfaces. Yeah, it is the house of someone well-to-do, of course, but at least he arrived at being well-to-do through his own creativity. I don't think he was born in an affluent family. It's just that, you know, being appreciated at SOM, he arrived at earning well. And, you know, here it is, his own home in Chicago, Walter Netsch. It's kind of funny because I spent some time in Evanston, Chicago, and I used to go a lot to the library of Northwestern University. And I remarked the building, but I didn't know it was built by Walter Netsch. Actually, at that time, I didn't even know of him. I was not aware of this architect. I was aware of SOM, but I didn't know the names of particular designers within that firm. Anyway, Walter Netsch. By the way, if you have high ambitions in the field of creativity as architects, I suggest to you to take a look at the fellowship program that SOM offers. You know, it has a very generous fellowship program. And in 1 year, even a Romanian student of architecture won it. But she was a student at Cooper Union in New York, but she was a Romanian, maybe 20 years ago. They have a very, very generous grant, a very generous fellowship, which is offered to creative forces in architecture. So because it's a very potent architecture firm, they invest in education, they invest in creativity, and so on. So again, anyone can participate. You don't have to be American. You can participate from India, Romania, Japan, Australia, South America. If you have very, very creative work. Now, these people, who knows, maybe they are, they are architects or students. He died already. They are, visiting, the house of this, rather well-known designer of SOM. I continue to say it, and I continue to think, and I continue to feel architecture is beautiful as an adventure. When you create something new, if you don't create something new, it's less satisfying. You might do a correct building, but architecture, to truly deserve the name architecture, has to be an adventure. It has to be a creative. Look at these people. They are probably young architects or students. Why did they come here? Well, they came here because this was the house of a famous designer, and who his house is kind of a manifesto itself. So try to make architecture which one day would be filled, with people like this, curious lovers of architecture. Yeah, it's probably a class, an atelier, with a professor sitting, I guess. Anyway, but it does move me, the power of art, the power of a good architecture, the power of a creative architecture. It makes people, get involved. It makes them curious. They want to learn. Look, they look up. Why do they look up? Because they want to absorb certain things. They are curious about certain things. And this curiosity is immensely important for creativity and for knowledge. And it hurts me when I see that there are young people who don't have this curiosity. Please, please, please do have this curiosity, even when you don't have a course that needs to be, honor, so to speak. Forget the course, forget the credit, forget the points, and whatever. Keep the curiosity open, alive. That is the most important thing, actually. So Walter Netsch, his own home. Look at these steps here, they are a little bit adventurous, no, and maybe even a little bit, dangerous. But danger is connected actually with creativity. Sometimes, what appears to be, very comfortable is actually not very creative. And Peter Eisenman, maybe he will thought that the best architecture is not the one that comforts us the most, is not the most comfortable. And in a certain way, I think he's right. Don't be obsessed by comfort, or by Neufert. That's not yet architecture. Architecture could have even idiosyncrasies. In a way, this stair is a little bit idiosyncratic. If you are not careful, or if you drank something, you might have some difficulties on these few steps. I don't know. Now look at this children's home in Nelsville, Wisconsin. I don't know when it was built, in the 60s or so. Now try to imagine you were a child and you were studying here. It's like a school, but for small children, a children's home. The geometry of the building and the approximate freedom of manipulating geometry the way he did, Walter Netsch, I think induces in the children a desire for freedom, for playfulness, for a playful geometry, and so on. Architecture is important. Architecture does influence life, whatever Peter Zumthor might say when he said that a long time ago, he gave up on the idea that architecture can save life. Maybe it cannot so-called save life, but it can improve life. And it can improve not just in measurable terms. I found a statement by Peter Zumthor rather hypocritical, because if he doesn't think that architecture can contribute to life? Why is he continuing to practice it? Why is he continuing to build? Anyway, fight for freedom. Please try to be as free as possible. Don't settle for, conventionalism and conformism. No, we need freedom in the world, and our world, in this country, not somewhere else, here. Freedom, but not an irresponsible freedom. I think it's possible to be free and creative and exuberant, but also responsible. It is possible. Look at this space here. Here is not an alignment of cubicle rooms with closed doors, on a corridor. It's an open space. It's the space of interaction. People interact here, and this is what life is. Yes, the pandemic complicated a little matters, but under normal conditions, life benefits from interaction. Look at the plants. There is movement. There is movement here, and movement does relate to, to freedom. Look at the structure. Look at the roofing system. It's enticing. It's interesting. This is what architecture is supposed to do. To entice, to provoke, to make you smile, to make you curious. Look at them. Who knows? Maybe one of these children, is a genius in the process of becoming. And I do think that architecture can encourage one to become quicker and better what one is supposed to become. Dostoevsky said that when you love someone, you see that someone as God intended him or her. I find this thought of Dostoevsky as being very nice. So again, when you love someone, you see that someone as God intended her or him, meaning very close to his or her highest potential. And that potential should never, ever, ever be betrayed or undervalued. Now, so Library at Wells College, another work by Walter Netsch. Well, he did the work part of SOM. The work was signed by SOM, but he was the designer of the project. Look again at the ceiling and the roofing system. The timid one would say, why did he complicate himself? Well, because life is beautiful when it is complicated. No, I'm joking, but there is a little bit of truth. Think of them and look at them, how, casually they lay on the floor and they read, and then they have these interesting and engaging and enticing above, which matters. It does matter. You see here an almost tormented and tormenting geometry. It's kept under control, yes, because he was a good manipulator of geometry, an excellent one. But the most interesting part of the building is the top, the ceiling, the roofing. There is where architecture becomes magical. Never, ever run away from what is called magical architecture. Architecture is supposed to be magical, and if it's not magical, it's not architecture. It's as simple as this. It has to be magical. So please attempt to make magical architecture. Sometimes it's not so easy, I understand, in the sense that, there are limitations in architecture, but the attempt should always be to create magic. Look at the plan here, it's based on geometry, but also irregularities, broken systems. I like it very much. And then look at those children. Again, there are no classes, rectangular classes with closed doors. No, open space, communication, interaction, dynamic life. Do they behave? Of course they behave as free human beings. Now, this chapel, which is very, very famous, it's for the Navy, the Air Navy. Anyway, 1954, Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill were commissioned to design the United States Air Force Academy Cadet Chapel, located in El Paso Country, Colorado, just outside of Colorado Springs. The chapel is one of the training center for officers of the United States Air Force, which is a large self-contained community. At an elevation of 6,500 feet, that's more than 2,000 meters, on the east of the Rocky Mountains. The 3,000-acre academy also contains housing for 8,000 people, a supply center, a hospital, an airfield, and an academic complex rising up the slope of the site. This program is split on 3 levels due to the slope, with the administration building, the social center, and the cadet chapel on the uppermost level. These spaces are used by both cadets and visitors, with the beautiful peaks of the chapel rising towards the sky attracts more than 1 million a year. Designed by Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill as part of the master plan and design of the entire US Air Force Academy campus, the Cadet Chapel was created as a single symbolic religious structure that accommodates the individuality of 3 major American faiths, thus requiring 3 distinct chapels. In creating a monumental religious building for the military, again, the design incorporated a monumental structure system. 17 rows of spires rise 150 feet high, coming to 17 points, shooting towards the sky above, using repetition to enhance the powerful essence of each massive spire. These spires are used with a tubular steel frame of 100 identical tetrahedrons that make up the structure. The south facade is the entrance of the chapel, which begins with a granite stairway climbing to a 1-story landing that leads to a band of gold anodized aluminum doors. Although a single building, the chapel houses 3 distinct main worship areas on 2 main levels: a Protestant chapel, a Catholic chapel, and a Jewish chapel. They are all in the same building, along with 2 all faiths rooms and 2 meeting rooms. The Protestant chapel is located on the upper level, and the Jewish and Catholic chapels and 1 all faiths room are located beneath it. Another level below lies the larger all faiths room and the meetings room. I like this very much, because I think religion shouldn't be segregated. If there is one God, shouldn't that God be for everyone? The Protestant chapel is the largest chapel and is designed to seat 1,200 people. So it's quite large. The nave is 92 feet, about 30 meters tall, 30 meters tall. Like a 10 floors high apartment building at its highest peak and measures 64 by 168 feet. The tetrahedrons form the walls of the chapel, with stained glass windows in between them that progress from darker to light as they approach the altar, creating a beautifully lit, majestic space. And here it is. It was, I understood, it was an adventure for SOM to propose this, because it looked stunningly different. This is not what one would have expected from a chapel, a religious building, but is very much in the spirit of the place and the function of the community there, which is the US Air Force. Maybe it's a little bit militaristic too, but it does have this emphasis, this, in a way, uplifting movement. And as you can see, it's quite big. So this was highly publicized in the year when it was made, I remember. And, in a way, it does show the sophistication of the American Army. I mean, yes, it's a chapel. Yes, it's a religious building, but it's connected with the seriousness with which these people are trained to, well, hopefully just to defend their country and not for other purposes. Look at it again, architecture is an adventure. And the magic of architecture is the result of, conceiving of that architecture as an adventure. A creation. Now, you see here the whole complex, and SOM was responsible for all of it, but the chapel is the most. Now they built another one, and I truly regret, because that one is eccentric too. Literally, it's quite actually an amazing structure, but you can find it on the web if you are interested. All in all, there is a certain level of idealism which one would not necessarily, see connected with what we call the army. But, considering the seriousness of what the war is, the sacrifices that are almost unavoidable, the presence of an uplifting chapel might be very important. Stained glass windows. We understood that we read that the closer you get to the altar, the more light gets in. So symbolically, this is appropriate. Of course, Walter Netsch was the main designer of this building, and you see it's quite big. And I imagine being there is inspiring. This is the plan. So there are 3 different chapels for 3 different religious denominations. The Protestant chapel is above, and then the Catholic and the Jewish one are underneath. And I truly like this, the fact that, different religions come together within the same building. I do like it, because why should we be segregated? Yes, the specificities are kept alive, but also the commonness and the togetherness is emphasized. So there is multiplicity in unity. And look at the plan; it's well done, even graphically. He was a skillful designer. He didn't work alone, of course, on this project, but he was the main designer. Now, we go to a different work, the Circle campus of the University of Illinois. Again, rotations, it is important to unsettle in a way, the static geometry and to make it move. And these rotations do just that. Again, someone would say he complicated himself. Yes, he did. But you cannot arrive at magic architecture without a certain level of so-called complication. Let's say, let's welcome, so-called complications. And look at this, look at this building. Not bad. It's almost the way he used geometry. There is almost something Islamic here, almost paradoxically, I felt to say it. So again, it's a university campus, but it is as such extremely important because it's the place where the students get their education. And look at the gathering spaces, again, those spaces where interactions happen. Planned or unplanned, it's fine. I particularly like the building during the process of being built. Walter Netsch and SOM, Skidmore, Owings and Merrill. Did he design the tower as well? I don't know, actually. He might have, but there is, even if maybe the tower is not so spectacular, perhaps, but the dialectics between the horizontal building and the vertical one, maybe are. What we see here is like in the architecture of Louis Kahn. We see the individual or the smaller spaces towards the outside and the larger communal spaces in the center. So we have multiplicity and unity. And, you know, this, for example, was done very explicitly at Exeter Library by Louis Kahn. That was it about Walter Netsch. He deserves better. Maybe on the day of his birth this year, I will amplify this presentation. And now we go to our Romanian. I am patriotic because I think Saul Steinberg was a force in art, and not just in art, but also in culture in general. And although generally I don't like cartoons so much, and he might be considered some kind of a cartoonist, but it's not true. He, yes, the language has elements of, you know, cartoon-like, but there is much more to it. He was a philosopher. He actually described himself as being a writer who draws. And a very sophisticated man. Let's read a little bit about him because he was born on this day, June 15th. Saul Steinberg was a Romanian-American artist. I took this text from Wikipedia. Best known for his work for The New Yorker, most notably View of the World from the 9th Avenue. He described himself as a writer who draws, as I just said. So Saul Steinberg was born on June 15th in 1914. So that's exactly 108 years ago, and died in 1999. Steinberg was born in Râmnicul Sărat, Buzău County, Romania, to a family of Jewish descent. In 1932, he entered the University of Bucharest. So he was born in 1914, and at 18, he entered the University of Bucharest. In 1933, he enrolled at the Polytechnic University of Milan in Italy to study architecture. He received his degree in 1940. In 1936, he began contributing cartoons to the humor newspaper Bertoldo. 2 years later, the anti-Semitic racial laws promulgated by the fascist government forced him to start seeking refuge in another country. In 1941, he fled to the Dominican Republic, where he spent a year awaiting a US visa. By then, his drawings had appeared in several US periodicals. His first contribution to the New Yorker was published in October 1941. Steinberg arrived in New York City in July 1942. Within a few months, he received a commission in the US Naval Reserve and was then seconded to the Office of Strategic Services. He worked for the Morale Operations Division in China, North Africa, and Italy. Shipped back to Washington in 1944, he married the Romanian-born painter Hedda Stern. After World War II, Steinberg continued to publish drawings in the New Yorker and other periodicals, including Fortune, Vogue, Mademoiselle, and Harper's Bazaar. At the same time, he embarked on an exhibition career in galleries and museums. In 1946, he was included in the critically acclaimed 14 Americans show at the Museum of Modern Art, New York, exhibiting along with Arshile Gorky, Isamu Noguchi, and Robert Motherwell, among others. Not a little honor, again, to be one of the 14 Americans in 1946 and he arrived just a few years earlier in the United States. Anyway, among others, Steinberg went on to have more than 81 artist shows in galleries and museums throughout the US, Europe, and South America. He was affiliated with Betty Parsons and Sidney Yanis galleries in New York and the Gallery Met in Paris. A dozen museums and institutions have in-depth collections of his work, and examples are included in the holdings of more than 80 other public collections. This was the man. And you know, we think that, you know, the one who makes cartoons must be a happy man. He doesn't look like a happy man. He looks like a rather stern man, you know, and, you know, concerned, even anxious. But I like the picture, you know, this is the man, and he had genius. This man had genius in his own way. I'm far from being an expert in cartoons, but his work is not really cartoons at all. He was a philosopher, and actually he expressed his philosophy through drawing and his vision of the world. And he was very intense, very prolific, and very hard to pin down, because people don't even know today, don't quite know where to place him, you know, in what artistic current and so on. He was unique. Another picture of him, and again, you look at a man, you know, born in Râmnicul Sărat, you know, rather intense and serious. Despite the fact that, yes, he's unveiling, you know, his chest with that curious, you know, figure there. Interesting man. I like Saul Steinberg, I confess. Although usually I'm not very turned on by cartoons, but his work is not just that. It's more to it. His work is even described as being expressionist. You know, I mean, expressionism in a way is the very opposite of cartoons. He was also a surrealist. I like the way he described himself, a writer who draws. So, Saul Steinberg, he made collages, he made all kinds of things. And here I only include some images from his work. You can easily find 500 or 1,000 pictures for an unending PowerPoint presentation. Very, very imaginative. Some people talked about the labyrinth of Saul Steinberg, because yes, there is, you know, even here in the coiffure of this lady. But I think he had an uncanny ability to portray psychological states in a humorous, but not only humorous way. Look at this, you know, a dialogue between a man and a woman. I love it, you know, because he really brings together the, you know, in a way, the essence of so many conflicts and misunderstandings, you know, between man and woman. He talks, you know, he talks in, you know, in triangles and geometrical figures, while she talks in a more fluid way, you know, more Art Nouveau, so to speak. So two different languages, and they are supposed to come to a common ground, and often they do not do. I like this drawing very much. Then, here it is. You see the ministru. This is, look, this was his passport. He had troubles when, you know, obviously bureaucratic troubles like many of us. And this was the passport when he was a student. You see here, de profesiune, student, călătorind, voyageant. He was going to Milan. But he looked almost, I mean, look at him. He looked very mature. He was 18, 19, the most 20. But this I noticed also when I contemplate the baccalaureate photograph of my father, you know, at 18, he looked much more mature than I did or my colleagues at the same age. There was something, I don't know very well how to explain it. Anyway, Saul Steinberg, born in Râmnicul Sărat, and you know, he probably had troubles with passports and with documents and so on. And I know something about those troubles too. When you enter the labyrinth of bureaucracy or the Kafkian castle, it's you need a way to remain sane, and his way was to draw. Now diplomas, I told you, he did graduate from the School of Architecture in Milan, the Polytechnic in Milan, but for some reason, perhaps because of the troubles he had with his passports and documents and bureaucracy to immigrate, he created this series of diplomas, and let us not forget, we are in a country which values diplomas a lot, and doctorates. That's why Andrei Pleșu said, maybe at birth, every Romanian should receive a doctorate. I love these diplomas by Saul Steinberg. I mean, look at those signatures. They are humorous. They are not real. These are called fake or false documents, but they do express, the juice of a diploma. For which many people sacrifice good years, maybe their best years in life, in order to get a damn diploma, which is what, it has some signatures, and often these diplomas actually don't tell a lot of truth. In fact, yes, you accepted to be a camel in an educational system, and after a number of years of suffering, you get this reward, the diploma, which entitles you to certain privileges, but certain rights. He created such a diploma for Alberto Giacometti, the greatest Swiss philosopher, who probably didn't have one. He created one for Charles Eames. As I said, Charles Eames, when he had troubles to receive a teaching position in a university in the United States, he asked Saul Steinberg to please make a diploma for me, and he did. And we are going to see later a picture of Charles Eames looking towards the product of the invitation, meaning the diploma that Saul Steinberg created for him. He also made one for Le Corbusier. I had it in a book which I had with the works of Saul Steinberg, but I couldn't find it for today on the web, although I searched for it. Here is Charles Eames. The picture is not very good, but you can still see the smile and the little, how do you call them? Gropice and obraj that Charles Eames, he's looking, smilingly towards that fictional work, the fictional diploma. And in a way, most diplomas are just that, fictional works. As Bernard Tschumi said, form follows fiction. They are in good measure actually fictional works. Look at this, they're all unreal. It's the theatrics of creating a good impression. That lots of signatures, different, different acknowledgements of your unbelievable performance. Look at those signatures, which become totally irrelevant in time. Who are those people who, so proudly signed your diploma? I like these diplomas by Saul Steinberg. He created a whole series of them. Yeah, look at this. It's really about the superfluity of bureaucracy, which claims that the whole world is, supported by it, but it's not so. It's an illusion. It's an illusion. All these papers, that you are a camel for 6 years or so. You struggle and struggle and struggle. And, later on, nobody asks you about this, nobody wants to see your beloved diploma, false documents. he created a whole series of fake documents or false documents. This is his own, I guess he worked on a passport. Was it his own passport? I think in the center here vertically, this is amplified, is zoomed in, is the word Romania. You see the letters, and look at how many signatures, for God's sake, and stamp and God, you know. Pagină rezervată pentru vize, page réservé pour les visas. You know. Yeah, but these are the documents which of what is official, you know. Another one, another fake document. I really find them amusing. And I did struggle with such documents. One day I could tell you a whole afternoon about my troubles with this. One day I even ended in some kind of a prison in Germany because I had problems with my passport, because I didn't have an entrance visa in the States, in Germany. So they abused me, you know, it's incredible, you know. I mean, look at this signature. Look at this. It's beautiful. I mean, you know, he drew this, you know, himself, Saul Steinberg, the man born in Râmnicu Sărat. He drew it. Just this, the beginning of this unreadable word or words was done by him. No, in his own way, he had genius, Saul Steinberg. He did. He's persiflating, of course. He's persiflating bureaucracy and the need for bureaucracy. Because it's all about appearances, really. It's not real. Look, it's not real. You can't read one single word in all that tightly, you know, squeezed text. Charles Sims, we saw this looking at the diploma, and he laughed it that, you know, the former citizen of Râmnicu Sărat created for him. You probably know of Charles Sims, a great promoter of modernist design and architecture. Another fake document, which, you know, appears convincing through its intricacies. Now, some covers of the New Yorker, for many years, he had this privilege, which he earned, to create the drawing, the original drawing, on the cover page of this famous New York magazine, the New Yorker, you know. And I don't know, I mean, it is a commentary in a way on the vastness of the world, you know. It starts with a particular street or avenue in New York City, and then it goes all the way over America and arrives at the Pacific Ocean, because New York is actually at the Atlantic Ocean. And you know, this is mid-America, Kansas City, some stone, some whatever, Las Vegas is here. And what is here? Japan. Over the Pacific Ocean is Japan. So I like these drawings because in their humorous way, they tell you something about the oneness of the world. The New Yorker, 1976, price 75 cents. At that time, 75 cents was not so little. Drawings. The man who was a writer, but who drew. He deserves to be known, and you can find a lot of his works, his drawings on the web. Here he is, a strange position with his right leg there. I don't know if I could do something like this. That shows an yogi's ability. But he was a dreamer, of course, you know, trying to live in this world. He loved cats. I have seen other pictures with him with cats. Hello, Mr. I almost felt like saying Mr. Saul Steinberg. Sometimes I have some difficulties with his name because there was also a famous North American writer, Steinberg, but he is Steinberg. So we have Steinberg, the famous North American writer, and we have Steinberg, the man born in Râmnicu Sărat, and staring at us now from the gallery in Milan through his drawing. He studied there, but you know, most of his sketches are based on the dynamics of some kind of a conflict. You know, like here two people, you know, or here a man and a woman, you know, here two men, you know, each one creating an arabesque with his or her discourse. You know, it's essentially, it's about the well-known misunderstandings between people. Or here, you know, look at this man producing music and look what he generates visually. Or here, this man, I guess, playing the piano, and the piano becomes what you look at here. The Labyrinth, Steinberg. I love labyrinths, it's true. Anyway, he had many exhibitions, and I even saw a picture where he was in the same room with Jean-Paul Sartre, probably. So he, you know, he became part of an artistic, intellectual elite. And why? Because he was very creative. That's why. In his own medium, in his own way, he was. Look at this, a man and a lady, you know, again, you know, having a discussion, but you know, the understanding is still a little bit hard to contemplate between the two. And I think the last picture, or one of the last, is where there is some kind of a, if we can call it a dialogue between a lady and a dog. Drawing is a way of reasoning on paper. As I told you, he was a philosopher. He was reasoning. He was reasoning on paper through drawing. Drawing is a way of reasoning on paper. Saul Steinberg. And this is an amusing drawing. You see here, you know, this incredibly well-armed, equipped knight. But look what he's fighting against. You know, I mean, now, he did have a very special sense of humor, I think, Saul Steinberg. He did. Maybe he had even his sarcasm or his pessimism or his questioning about, you know, the hardcore capitalism of the United States. This drawing seems to suggest something in this sense, maybe a little bit cryptically. Here we have, you know, two armies, you know, let's say the Republicans and the liberals, the Democrats, a man generating a labyrinth through his talk. Maybe sometimes I do the same. Yeah. No. I think you as students in architecture know a lot about this short word, no. But this no this no, N-O, is actually containing much more ample discourse. But in essence, it is a no, you know, which could have been whispered or said loudly, as it is, a no. No, sir, no, you cannot do this. You are not allowed to do this. No, no. Here is another discourse, which is very, you know, elaborate and complex and with incredible intricacies. The man is dreaming, of course, and other, I don't know, things by Saul Steinberg. Here is an architectural drawing. I could have chosen to show architectural drawings by him because there are, but anyway, here is some kind of a so-called architectural drawing, but it's still dreamy. Although the man graduated from actually a good architecture school in Italy. Stops for the night, the highways. He was a contemplator. He contemplated the world from from afar, from far below or from far above. Citibank. And I think this is now we're approaching the end. Maybe two more images. Again, we see some kind of I forgot. This is the conflict or the discussion between Sardinia and Paris. I don't know exactly what it's based on. Maybe on some kind of a political event. Anyway, and now I think this is the last image. It amused me, because you have the beast on the left, staring at the master, the lady, and the lady, produces her, discourse in that way, visualized, and the dog or the little beast is using a different kind of discourse. Do they understand each other? Well, approximately or imperfectly. Anyway, let's wish him happy birthday. And now we go to the last presentation, a short one about father of the skyscraper. Of course, North American from the United States, William Le Baron Jenney. There were several fathers of the skyscraper, but he was one of them. Some think he was the one, William Le Baron Jenney. So William Le Baron Jenney, actually he died again, I was wrong, on June 14th, not June 15th, sorry. Anyway, we are one day late. Was an American architect and engineer who is known for building the first skyscraper in 1884. So again, the first skyscraper based on this text was built in 1884 by William Le Baron Jenney and became known as the father of the American skyscraper. In 1998, Jenney was ranked number 89 in the book 1000 Years, 1000 People, ranking the men and women who shaped the millennium. Well, not bad, it will be the 89th from 1000 people. It's not so little. Anyway, here he was William Le Baron Jenney, and we remember him that he built the first skyscraper. He looks rather distinguished in his later years. William Le Baron Jenney. Now this is a house for a colonel in the army, built in 1869, but no pictures. What is this? Sorry, no pictures. First Congregational Church, built in 1892 or 1888. So he didn't build only skyscrapers, but even a church or two or three. The end of the 19th century was busy building churches. It's not too bad, even the interior has some complexities. Again, the ceiling and the roofing do matter, architecturally speaking, symbolically and factually. We are going to see the skyscrapers by him too, but now we begin with early works, and this church is one of them. Now the home insurance building in Chicago, built in 1884, all of a sudden, welcome to the metropolis, welcome to the huge buildings, and huge it is. Look at the cars and look at the building. Of course, for insurance companies, because those insurance companies make all the money in the world. We saw yesterday the pyramids that Kevin Roach built for an insurance company. Yes, he only built 3 pyramids, but he planned to build 9. This is not a bad building, actually, by Le Baron Jenney, William. Now, horticultural building for the World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago, built in 1893. And you see the magical word, the horticultural. I think we need horticulture even within the schools of architecture. And there are actually schools of architecture where you can also study horticulture. The Cincinnati School of Architecture does have such a department or faculty of horticulture. We need horticulturalists, yes, meaning gardeners in a way. So this is the building. What can we say? It's not bad, but it was destroyed. Too bad. Quite large. My God, my God. The World's Fair in 1893 in Chicago. Of course, the attraction of palaces, usually inspired by Europe, was irresistible. William Le Baron Jenney. Now, Lake Forest Cemetery, in the 19th century, architects were busy to work for cemeteries as well, and tombs and graves and chapels. We don't do that any longer too much, but who knows? He did this whole park, I call it park, the Lake Forest Cemetery. It's a cemetery. I guess he did the planning, the landscape design, whatever was needed. So a versatile architect, William Le Baron Jenney. The Ludington building in Chicago, built in 1891, which is a national historic landmark in the United States. And look at this here, not bad. And this is, I mean, this was built 130 years ago, but if it was built today, you would have said, sure, that's the building of the day. But it's a building for, built 130 years ago. So he was innovative. And you see here that we are in the United States, because in the United States, the fire escape stair is very often placed like this, and with total disregard for the aesthetics of the facade. They're just utilitarian structures hanging, on the facade without any kind of, study or relationship to whatever the building is. A little bit strange, but don't play games with fire, especially in Chicago, which was burned down, dramatically, not much earlier from when this building was built. Why does the United States have so much troubles with fire? But not only the United States, because of the many outlets and gadgets, and of course there is fire. There is fire in Bucharest too. There is everywhere, because we use a lot of energy, and we have a lot of wires and all kinds of gadgets and equipments, and anything could happen. Residence, 1869. This is rather passeistic. You wouldn't expect the father of the skyscraper to build this bucolic Victorian villa. But if you ask me if I would like to live in such a building, I wouldn't say necessarily no. No, it's probably a pleasant place to be in, to look at a book with drawings by Saul Steinberg, sitting on a chaiselong on the veranda, might be nice. And, the landscape around it is nice too, with all those trees. The Manhattan building in Chicago, another national historic landmark, 1891. This is actually my preferred building from his oeuvre, because I like these bow windows, and I think it's well kept under control, the building, and it's big, it's impressive, it's massive, it's monolithic, but because of these fragmentations on the facade, it's not oppressive, I think. And look what's going on here. Why the need for ornamentation? Well, Louis Sullivan, another father of the tall office building and maybe skyscraper, he also employed ornaments, more original than what the Baron Jenney, but you see both men who promoted an audacious structure for the world of the future and for the tall buildings, didn't give up ornament. In fact, they employed it quite, abundantly in some parts of the building, like here. So we should reflect perhaps on this. But seen from afar, the building looks, freshly modern and vigorous and rather devoid of so-called details, which in this case are of an ornamental nature. New York Life Insurance Building, Chicago, 1894. This man built a lot and built big buildings in the windy city, the city of the winds. Powerful buildings, big buildings. I mean, imagine this building in an European city. It would have been, the talk of the town, so to speak, the talk of the country. Well, Chicago has so many of these, and not only Chicago, of course. Look at the structure, metallic structure, so, there were advancements, the technology was advancing with high speed and based on steel, of course. And, they got taller and taller and taller and so on. Second Leiter building in Chicago, 1889. This is, restored, refurbished, and it looks just fine. If this building was built today, it would be published immediately on Arch Daily and Design and other, designs and websites and blogs and all the rest. It does look, almost contemporary, doesn't it? William Le Baron Jenney, Chicago, House of Campbell. I'm a little bit nostalgic because I lived in Chicago for almost 6 years, but it looks more impressive and more emotionally, affecting one from afar. Because when I was there, I wasn't so moved, but now I am, of course. Anyway. William Le Baron Jenney. This is an older picture, you can tell from the cars. Ann Arbor, Michigan. What is this DKE shunt? I don't know what it is. Some kind of maybe religious building or a club or something. Kind of a church, maybe. I don't know, but it is what it is. Ann Arbor, which has an important university. Now, part or all of the Garfield Park, New Central Park Avenue in Chicago. What is this? I guess the same park. Did he design this building? Unfortunately, I'm not sure. I don't know. Maybe yes, maybe not. But if he designed it, I think this building is not bad, and it's. If I reflect on the work of some famous Dutch architects, this work is not inferior to their work. I think it's good, and it's possible he designed it. William Le Baron Jenney. Nature is always nice. Let's keep everything that nature created alive. Let's not cut down one single piece of grass. Now, there are miracles. Once I intrigued a professor at the university here, I told him, for me, a blade of grass is more important than the Parthenon. And then I explained myself, the Parthenon doesn't grow towards light, but a blade of grass in all its fragility does. In the spring, it pierces the snow. Well, we don't have snow any longer, but you understand, and grows towards light. That humble blade of grass that we step on, it's amazing. It's alive, no? It is alive. The Parthenon in all its splendor is not alive. It doesn't grow towards light. Sorry, Ictinos and Callicrates. That's it. So thank you for being here today. And I invite you tomorrow as well.